Thank you again for hosting us this evening, and we'd like to take just a moment to present where we are with the urban forest strategy and developing it for council approval. We got involved in the urban forest strategy largely as an outcome of some of the observations in our work in the eco-inventory. And I think as a summary statement, one of the major shifts that occurred to us, as well as I think just in the context of focusing on urban forest management as a whole, was that we recognize that trees are often managed at the periphery of city policy and regulation, that we see trees every day, that they define our experience in the city, but we rarely treat them in aggregate as an asset for the city. So one of the opportunities with the city's urban forest management strategy is to start to look beyond trees in the city and start to look at a forest for the city, and specifically how the urban forest is a public resource and how it is in fact a service provider for our community. I think that tips very obviously to even the recent award that the city has received on greenhouse gas reduction. So I'd like to take a moment to applaud the city for that award, and also recognize that those are the sorts of valuable resources that our urban forest provides if we are to cultivate it and take care of it into the future. For a number of reasons, though, the urban forest, as we've measured it most simply by canopy coverage, has been shrinking at a rate of about 1.5% per year. So that's about 15% canopy loss since 2004. And we recognize that with that loss also goes the benefits that come with the urban forest itself. The strategy was developed in recognition of that urban forest as a valued public resource in decline, and considered the challenges and opportunities specific to New Westminster as identified through the background research and the analysis and consultation that Erica mentioned previously. We identified a comprehensive set of 38 actions and 12 priority actions that attempt to reverse the current trend and actually protect the urban forest, increase canopy from the current 18% canopy cover to a target of 27%. That translates into the additional planting of 8,500 trees in public lands and approximately 3,300 trees on private lands. And that highlights the public-private partnership required to get this done, implemented over a 20-year time frame between now and about 2035. So that's pretty much it, but we want to take a moment and go back and cover some of the background as we get towards the end of this presentation and take up the full 10 minutes. So we'll start by asking, what is the urban forest? The definition is that the urban forest is made up of the ecosystems of trees and vegetation, waterways and wildlife found on both private and public lands throughout the city. So this collage shows some of those snapshots of lands and views and experiences through the city, from backyards and parks to streets to plazas to parking lots. It's highly valued for its environmental quality, its beauty and naturalness, and the social and recreation that it provides to the city. And it's been widely recognized throughout this process that those values contribute significantly to the quality of life of New Westminster. An aerial view of the city shows an obvious scale of the urban forest as you look across the city and where you find that in those various places. So then we ask, what's the urban forest doing for us? And we start to look at the benefits of the urban forest, again, as an aggregate resource. Within the context of best practices in sustainable development and city planning, the urban forest is a uniquely sustainable resource within the city, and it indeed makes our cities more sustainable itself. Measured according to the sort of standard measures of sustainability, looking at economic, social, and environmental indicators, we start to see the value that urban forests provide. They alleviate demands on infrastructure and energy use through flood management, stormwater controls, shading for energy efficiency. They provide critical ecological services, including habitat, supporting biological diversity, climate change adaptation, and moderating microclimate, including supporting air, soil, and water quality. And they contribute to human health and wellness through recreational opportunities, psychological wellness, amenity, property value, and even defining the heritage character of our city. They align nicely with the priorities that were identified by Council during the planning process, and those specifically being human health and well-being, trees cleaning the air and providing green space that provide a broad range of benefits, reducing stress, environmental health priority, that the urban forest provides habitat and supports the health of streams and water and rivers. The priority of energy savings, again, shading and providing windbreaks, both for savings on heating and cooling costs for buildings, as well as comfort and microclimate at the street level for pedestrians. So these benefits are visible across the city. They're visible in our streets and parks, private lands and public lands. And in many cases, we think that those benefits may be immeasurable. More and more, though, we're able to quantify these values. And we're recognizing that the return on a management dollar is $1.35. The recent TD Economics report on the value of urban forests in the Vancouver region looked at $1.35 return for every management dollar invested in the urban forest. So what's the problem? The problem is that we're declining at 1.5%, largely attributed to urban growth, densification, and urban trees in competition with other infrastructure and urban services. You can see the small graph above shows really a tapered increase in the decline since 2004. That's an aggregate number, and I would also suggest that we need to focus on how these canopy coverages and declines are measured across the city and that they are not necessarily equally spread. So here you see a graph showing the different canopy coverages by neighborhood. You also see a comparison at the street view level of a canopy at approximately 40%, as well as a canopy of approximately 10%. If we start to look at the loss of those canopies, we also recognize that we lose the benefits. So then the question becomes, what can we do about this? And this is the introduction of the urban forest management strategy itself, with 3 primary goals: to protect the urban forest, to enhance the urban forest and the management of the urban forest, and to engage all stakeholders in understanding the importance of managing the urban forest. So the objectives themselves in terms of protecting the urban forest, we're looking at increasing the canopy cover to a 20% target citywide. 27%. We're looking at introducing a tree bylaw to protect existing canopy cover on public and private property. And we're looking at adapting the urban forest population in the city, across the city, to a changing climate. We chose the 27% target because it is both ambitious and achievable. It represents the North American average for municipal urban forest cover. And based on a mapping exercise of existing plantable spaces in the city, we recognize that we are able to do that through planting on public lands and partnering with private land protection and planting as well. The tree bylaw represents a companion mechanism to protect existing canopy and more closely manage changes to the urban forest as well. And the climate change adaptation strategies include species selection and suitability, as well as storm response and pest and disease management, largely operational measures. When we consider the enhancement goals, these focus on updating the policy guidelines and best practices to support urban forest management, and that includes a review and update of policies across the city. Enhancing the tree care program by increasing the resourcing and information management, so mapping capabilities as well as the actual operational side. Improving the diversity of the forest planting, specifically around species, genus, and family, to maintain adaptability and resilience in changing climate. And improving environmental health by establishing some goals and objectives beyond the street, park, yard locations of the urban forest to look at sensitive areas as well. This ties into the work that we did with staff in reviewing current practices and looking at what's required to implement the urban forest management strategy. Finally, the third goal of the strategy is to engage all stakeholders, internal and external, to align the efforts behind the strategy. So that includes developing an urban forest stewardship program to build community ownership of the management strategy, as well as working with all departments so that the goals and objectives of the management strategy itself are implemented and included within other policy documents. To date, the process has been incredibly collaborative, and all of these efforts have developed a strategy in close collaboration